When you understand how the brain works, it's not a surprise that so many people are struggling with the symptoms of anxiety and depression disorders in this modern world. Let me explain. Imagine this is your brain. Now, this is your conscious bit, the bit you know of as you, the bit that generally interacts with the world. And it's attached to this vast intellectual resource, your intellectual mind. Now, when you work from this part of your brain, you're happy, calm, you're in control, and this part will always come up with answers based on a proper assessment of the situation, and it's generally very positive. But there's another part, and this is your original primitive part. The centre and influential bit is called the amygdala, and this is the bit that we refer to as the fight, flight, freeze part of the brain. And it's associated with two other primitive parts. You've got the hippocampus, which holds your primitive and sometimes inappropriate behaviour patterns. And you've got the hypothalamus, which regulates the chemical responses in your body and mind. So, to put this in a bit of context, if you were to imagine you were to go outside your house and you bumped into a polar bear, what would happen? Well, you'd move from your intellectual part down to your primitive part. Your heart rate would go up, your stomach would start churning, you'd get all sweaty, and you'd be off like a shot. Which is not surprising if there's polar bears around, and that's quite appropriate. But the same thing tends to happen in life. As our anxiety levels go up, and it can be a gradual process, we start to lose intellectual control, and to a greater or lesser extent, the primitive brain steps in to try and help. But this primitive brain always works within the parameters of anxiety, depression, and anger, or a combination of all three. Anxiety, depression, and anger are all primitive opt-out clauses. And if you imagine, if you were back in those primitive times and you were outside in the jungle hunting, I doubt you would be very far away from your panic button. But if you couldn't go out to hunt because there was snow or ice or danger outside your cave, then you'd probably just go back inside your cave, you'd pull the rug over your head, and you wouldn't interact with the world until the situation changed. And anger is just a primitive way of increasing our strength so we can fend off wild animals and other wild tribesmen. So it's whenever this primitive brain thinks that your life is in some sort of crisis, emergency, or danger that it steps in to try and help. And when it does, there are certain characteristics we can recognise. One of them is that it will always look at the worst possible scenario. It catastrophises, which is quite appropriate. If there's polar bears around, you'd be pleased. But it will do the same thing. If an unexpected bill's arrived, if we've had an argument, if we've got a health condition, if we're facing redundancy, it will go to the worst possible scenario and it will obsess. So whatever we've got on our mind, it just goes round and round and round. And it's not going to let you forget. It's also very vigilant. So you might forget for a little while you're busy doing something, but as soon as you stop, it will come back, those intrusive thoughts. But it doesn't know what to do about it. It's not your intellect. All it can do is refer to previous patterns of behaviour. If whatever you did yesterday, you survived, it'll encourage you to do the same thing again today. So we end up going through the same coping mechanisms, tools that just keep us existing, but we're not living. So why does this happen in the first place? Because of course we haven't got polar bears roaming around. Well, it's not the events in our lives that cause us to lose intellectual control. If it was, every student at college or university would be having panic attacks. We know it's the way we think about things. And our primitive brain is a very negative brain, and it will negatively forecast the future. It could be really big things, like I'll never get that house, I'll never get that job, I'll never do this, I'll never do that. But equally, it can be everyday things. And people who are operating from this primitive brain typically will be negatively forecasting and worrying and what-ifing about all sorts of things. So perhaps, I don't know, you've got a social event to go to, or a meeting, or an appointment. You'll be going over and over that in your head. You'll go over it 50 times. 50 times it will be a disaster. The actual event goes okay. They normally do. But by that time, you've been through it 51 times. 50 times in your head. And it's really important to understand that your brain does not know the difference between imagination and reality. It's your brain. It totally believes what you're thinking. So when you worry and what if, or when you negatively introspect about yourself, your past, your life, this negative thinking is what is converted into anxiety, and it stores up in what we call a stress bucket, and it piles up and piles up and piles up, and sometimes it overflows, which is when we tend to have panic attacks, or we start developing new habits, or we just can't cope, or we withdraw into our shell. So that's what's gone wrong. We can choose to go over and over what's wrong. We can find plenty of causes if you like, but does that fix it? No, it doesn't. That's where Sort Your Shit Out guided journal comes in. You get a 12-week course with your guided journal. You get an extra bonus 3 weeks of additional tuition. You also get another 3 weeks of coaching to keep you on the right track. And in addition, you will get 12 hypnotherapy tracks to use along with a guided journal. The hypnotherapy tracks are an integral part of reducing your stress bucket, reducing the anxiety, helping you sleep better, and helping your brain connect in a different way so it can work out what to do. Sort Your Shit Out guided journal is available on Amazon. It's the only place it's available at the moment. So use the link below to head over there now, and you can start your journey to finding the real you.